Welcome to our channel, Flight Notes Center. The topic of discussion today is instrument flight rules. And so, what is IFR? As a brief overview, sometimes pilots fly into conditions that does not favor visual flying, such as foggy conditions and in clouds. Therefore, how does the pilot control the aircraft? The pilot will only be able to control the aircraft by sole reference to his flight instruments. And the big question we ask ourselves is, what are these rules? So instrument flight rules can basically be defined as those rules that allow an aircraft to be flown in weather conditions that do not meet the minimum requirement for visual flight rules. These conditions are known as instrument meteorological conditions. And therefore, let's ask ourselves, how does the pilot control this aircraft? The pilot must then have sole reference to the flight instruments for him to enable him to control the aircraft, to enable to fly in the correct altitude, the attitude and the course of the aircraft, and also in the correct speed. Therefore, basically, instrument flying rules entail flying instruments. So what are the requirements that will enable a pilot to fly under IFR? The following requirements must be met before the pilot flies under these conditions. They are divided into two categories: the aircraft requirements and the pilot requirements. For the aircraft requirements, we have the instruments. The aircraft must be fitted with instruments, which are basically the primary instruments, such as the HSI, AH, altimeter, SI, and these instruments could have some other additional instruments that will enable the pilot to be able to control the aircraft. The second, under the aircraft requirements, is the radio navigation equipment, such as the VOR, the GPS, the transponder, the locator beacon. And now under the pilot category, the requirements are the pilot needs to be qualified and must be licensed. The license must be valid and up to date. And also the pilot must have instrument ratings such as white, master green, and green. When does a pilot comply with IFR? So on compliance with IFR, flights that are to be conducted in accordance to IFR, these situations might exist that the weather conditions deteriorate and does not meet visual meteorological criteria. Therefore, the pilot must fly IFR. Number two, all transonic and supersonic flights must be flown under IFR. The third one is when pilots are going to fly at flight level above flight level 150 or a level that is stated by Civil Aviation Authority of a state or a country. Therefore, he must comply with IFR rules. And fourth, when pilots may sometimes prefer to fly IFR in VMC conditions. This means that the conditions favor visual flying, but at his preference, the pilot may choose to fly under instrument flying rules. And these four conditions is what makes the basis for compliance with IFR. So sometimes pilots can decide to change from IFR flight to VFR flight. And one thing that we need to know and really underscore is that an IFR flight is not to be changed to VFR flight unless it is intended that the flight is to continue for a reasonable period of uninterrupted visual meteorological conditions. It's also the responsibility of the commander of the aircraft or the captain to change the flight plan from IFR to VFR flight. Another responsibility is that the commander of the aircraft must notify the appropriate air traffic services unit, specifically state that he or she wishes to cancel the IFR flight plan and is also to supply the air traffic services unit with the resultant changes to the current flight plan. So certain conditions must exist when changing over from IFR flight to VFR flight. And before any changeover from a VFR flight, from IFR flight to VFR flight, then the pilot must initiate the change and express himself. And the following conditions must be adhered to. The first condition is that the change is only acceptable when the pilot uses the specific expression, cancel my IFR flight plan, and supplies the changes to be made to the current flight plan. Number 2, if the air traffic services unit, which accepts the change in flight rules, believes or has reason to believe that the pilot will encounter IMC weather en route, then the pilot must be notified immediately. The third condition is the change of flight rules must be acknowledged by the air traffic controller using the terminology IFR flight cancel at this time. The time is in Zulu time. Number 4, the change from IFR flight to VFR flight only affects the entries in item 8 and 15 of the flight plan and does not cancel the entire flight plan. Number 5, the last condition is no invitation to change from IFR to VFR may be allowed by the ATC either by direct communication or by illusion. And this marks the end of our discussion under IFR. And please, if you like the content, please hit the like button or leave a comment. And thank you very much for watching our content. Thank you.